So some of you probably know Robin as the speaker that she is. And for those of you that don't, I'd like to give you a little bit of information about Robin. Robin is a valued speaker in many places around the United States. And currently, I have been at places in the police canine world where she has been as one of the featured lecturers, telling people about dogs in general and especially about detection dogs. She is also the CEO, founder of Canine Census Foundation. I think some of you are probably very familiar with that. She is a canine handler, trainer for disaster and human remains detection. She's certified and a FEMA evaluator. She also does some interesting things in the area of explosives and narcotics, where she is a trainer and a handler. The United States Police Canine Association is so very pleased to present Robin Greubel, and we'd like to get her going on what you need to know about SAR and cadaver dogs. And Robin, I'm sure I missed about 3 pages worth of information on your qualifications, but I'm sure that they will soon see the value of this lecture. Please start.
Well, thank you, Don. Please, anybody, if you can't hear me, let me know. I'm trying to use my microphone so I don't sound like I'm in my basement in a hollow, which I actually am. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity to take a few minutes to talk about canine search and rescue and what we do. When Don and Melinda and I had first started talking about me presenting at the through a webinar, the topic kind of came up about the fact that just a brief overview of how search dogs work, which might be different than how the explosives and narcotics dog work, as well as a little bit of information on what we do. As Don said, I've been doing search and rescue for about 22 years. Started out as a FEMA or as a wilderness search and rescue dog handler. And so have moved on from there, and my slides tell a story. Please ask questions. I am happy to answer as many as I can. This whole presentation is kind of geared and unfortunately is United States centric because according to us, we are the center of the universe. And I can only keep up on the United States policies. Keeping up on everybody else's makes my head hurt. And so keep that in mind, especially as I start walking through certifications and qualifications. So like I said, covering United States, please ask questions. You guys get a lot of talking head lectures, and it's always nice to have somebody who will answer back, right? So my frame of reference, I got a Sable Border Collie that I started with search and rescue work 22 years ago. Picked him up, said, let's go out and start this journey together. And since then have been through, I'm on puppies 11, 12, and 13 that almost all of my dogs I've started at 8 weeks of age, got them up certified and deploying, whether it's FEMA level disaster, area search, cadaver disaster, narcotics and explosives, and a little bit of stuff in between. So I end up having everything from border collies, English shepherds to labs, to my current FEMA level partner and cadaver dog partner is a Dutch shepherd. We ask our dogs to do all sorts of really, really scary and interesting things. And then if you look at a lot of the photos that are going through here, the majority of your search and rescue dogs are handled off leash. And we ask these dogs to do really, really scary things. This happens to be an ice floe in northern Nebraska. We were looking for a missing person after the dam broke. And those big chunks of what looks like concrete are not actually concrete. Those are large chunks of ice. And the majority of what we do, it's search and rescue is a broad discipline, right? We respond at the request of the agency having jurisdiction. In the United States, that typically, especially for search and rescue missions, most of the time tends to be law enforcement. Either the local sheriff's department, or if it's within the city limits, it's the local police department that actually have responsibility for search and rescue in the United States. Most of what I'm going to cover, you guys don't get in any type of training because you're too busy learning all sorts of other things. Most of the responders, unless you're talking at the FEMA level, are volunteer professionals. That means that they pay for all of their own training. They pay for their own certifications. They pay to go to all the continuing education, all of that sort of thing. The FEMA teams are a little different because they are hosted by FEMA and then respective fire departments. Certifications and continuing education are actually required. If we end up doing a whole lot of ground search, that's actually talked about in ASTM, which we'll get to a little bit later. So search and rescue is a very disciplined. Ground searchers are kind of the basic go-to for everything that you might need to know about search and rescue. When we get deployed, even as canine handlers, we're a ground searcher first. In the majority of searches that I have been on, the subject is found based on one really good clue that most of the time a ground searcher has seen. You can also do search management. So this is actually something like managing land search operations when you have 500 convergent volunteers show up and you have to manage them and tell them where to go. Specialties within search and rescue. Canine search and rescue is considered, in my opinion, remember this is all opinion, right? Some of it is. Our canines are a specialty. Technical rescue is a specialty. Swift water, disaster search, avalanche, mounted SAR, using ATVs, drones are now specifically used. All of these disciplines take additional training and take additional certifications upon what a ground search certification. So who are canine search and rescue people? Most of us have a full-time job that pays for the dog habit. And when I say it's a dog habit, that is exactly what it is. On average, your canine search and rescue professional pays between $3,000 to $10,000 a year of their own money to go to certifications, to go to trainings, and all of those sorts of things. Even on deployments, most of the times we do not, nobody charges for deployment. So when I say most of the time, I've had law enforcement ask me, well, how do I pay you? I'm like, you don't. We're there when you call us. Search and rescue is a high expense, low use type of resource. This is why you do not see many sheriff's departments or police departments maintaining their own cadaver or area search dog. It might actually be another trailing and tracking tends to be an add-on for what the dogs are doing additionally. And that might be in more of a apprehension aspect, especially for the pointy-eared dogs. These professional volunteers are highly dedicated. Unfortunately, if you start looking at when a lot of your people go missing or get lost, we tend to be we actually tend to be missing out on a lot of family gatherings. There's been many 4th of July holidays I've missed. I've missed couple Thanksgivings. several weddings, either due to training or deployments, and that's a pro or a con depending on whether or not you like weddings, right? And so they are the people. We get up at 2 o'clock in the morning if you have a live find dog, and we will go out and search until the following day at 2 p.m. We'll sleep for 3 hours on a garage basement, get up and go back out because somebody's life depends on it. So the actual skill level that I see in many of the search and rescue handlers that I come in contact with is actually quite advanced. And so kudos to all the search and rescue people who are on this call, because I recognize the dedication. I've lived it. I also understand the pain, suffering, and tears that you go through trying to get the partner that you picked up and ready for certification when you don't really have a training officer standing over your shoulder helping you every day. It's hard. And that's something else to note. Most of these people, since they are volunteers, they are self-trained. They actually end up making up their own training plans. They get that 8-week-old puppy. They go through the teenage years. They go through all the pain and suffering of figuring out why their dog won't do something. And in the end, they end up with a certified, very valuable resource for their community. So typically, this is what a search and rescue professional will do. They have really high ethical standards. They are a dog trainer. If you are holding on to the other end of the leash at any given point, you are a trainer. When I deploy with my dog to go find somebody, I then turn into a handler. We tend to like being outside. We do a lot of studying about lost person behavior. There's a really good book out there about lost person behavior, and now we start actually having to learn about missing person behavior. There is a difference between lost and missing. Lost is someone who just doesn't know where they are at. Missing is someone who is missing because they've usually had help. A lot of calls, we're now moving more into the missing category than the lost category, unless you live somewhere like Colorado and you have Pikes Peak in your response area and hikers get lost. In my area of the world, we have a lot of missing people. Search and rescue people may call law enforcement to offer their assistance. There is some responsibility that goes along with that with law enforcement on the other end when people call you and offer their assistance. You need to vet them before you allow them onto your scene. They can, if you call me to come out on a search, I may not have the right dog for a job. Right now, I handle a cadaver dog. I do not have a live find dog, but I'm also a search manager. I can help you plan areas. I can help you deal with the 500 convergent volunteers that are showing up. So make sure that you've reached out to us and had those conversations. They will only search where they have been assigned. Knowing what has and hasn't been covered is actually really, really important for search management. They will not, a professional search and rescue team and a professional searcher will not show up on scene unless they have been asked to do so. It is very, very much frowned upon in our discipline for you to self-deploy. And we do not charge the family for our services. So most of the time, unless law enforcement would like to buy us some pizza, because we all work for pizza, law enforcement also doesn't pay us either. Do we appreciate getting paid? Absolutely. We would appreciate food. If you need us there for more than one operational period, a hotel or a warm place to sleep would be fantastic. So just keep that in mind. A lot of search and rescue teams are actually nonprofits. And so you could, if you have it in your budget, you could make a donation back to the team as a whole, so that the team can then use that to help pay for bringing in a certifying official and all that sort of jazz. The different types of search and rescue dogs. There are lots of them. Some of them build on each other, some of them don't. They're in our world, there is a difference between, and I've got these split up on this slide in two groups. The top group is the live find dogs. The bottom group are the cadaver dogs and the odor dogs. So if you look at the Academy Standard Board, we have actually defined scent for live people, and odor is everything else, including guns, narcotics, microbes, anything that is not a live human. So the dogs that are in my brain, because of how we work, my explosives dog and the seriousness that is my explosives dogs equates to the seriousness of a live find area, live find dogs, or dogs that do live searching for live humans. Because if I don't do my job well, someone can die. And therefore, when you start looking at tracking, trailing, the area search, disaster search live, and avalanche, we start thinking about those dogs they're kind of like our first line of defense, especially when you have a missing person. Those are the dogs that kind of go out the door first. Those are the people who end up getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning and will work until a blizzard moves in and it actually becomes too dangerous for the searchers to work. Your cadaver dogs and water search, disaster search, human remains, and human remains detection dogs, that's all dead people. And yes, dead people smell underwater. As they off-gas, all the gases come to the surface and then they're released, and that's what the dogs smell. We also have dogs that will do evidence and article search. And like I mentioned earlier, most of our searches, successful searches, have ended because we found one good evidence or piece or article that's related to the subject. Now, I want everybody to think really a lot about the fact that your human remains dogs, and this is probably going to sound a little callous, but our subject is already dead. We do not need to risk the health or well-being of our searchers and or our dogs in order to go find someone who is already deceased. Most of the country right now here in the United States is under excessive heat. Now is not the time to call us unless you have something very specific for a search warrant to come out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and search a particular property. We're going to burn through dogs really, really fast. We would really, especially for cadaver dog handlers, schedule us. We come very prepared. And we would be happy to work with you as you work through things. Now, the other thing for you to note about these types of search dogs, a lot of what the person ends up doing with their canine partner is the interest and how you get deployed. It takes a special person, bless everybody's heart, who does tracking and trailing, because I just can't do it. It takes a lot of dedication to run behind a dog. I cut my chops in area and wilderness search because the dog does a lot of work. I have to keep track of where we have and haven't been. When my area search dogs were up and going at their prime, they were ranging up to 1/4 mile away from me. I would have to keep track of where we have and haven't been on a map. I live in Iowa. We don't do a whole lot of avalanche search, but I have called people who do avalanche search to figure out how a body decomposes that might be buried in a snowbank because of a missing persons case that we had happen. Human remains detection handlers were a special breed because we have a whole interesting training freezer. And we're always looking for those new interesting places to go train. Water search is a specialty in and of itself. It takes not only skills to be able to read your dog, but your dog must understand that they are limited by a boat and they can't follow up odor on themselves. And evidence and article search, they are usually a subcomponent of some of the other dogs because it's really nice to have your trailing or tracking dog also be able to tell you about articles that they might find on a trail. So how do they work? And I covered this a little bit. It really depends on the dog. Trailing dogs, this is taken, I believe, right out of William Siratuck's book. Trailing dogs work kind of like this, very, very sporadically. Trailing dogs and tracking dogs are typically on lead. Some of this might seem really fundamental, but it's my understanding from talking to Don and Melinda that sometimes when you have handlers who show up and our first instinct, like this one, for search and rescue handlers is to take your dog off leash and let them run. That's not how you're typically used to seeing dogs work. Search and rescue people, we do this all the time. The expectation is that I can call my dog off a herd of deer. And I can control all of those sorts of things with my dog. So we actually have do a lot of training on off-leash control. We have to do some obedience. We have to do all those sorts of things. Cadaver dogs respond to the odor of human remains. Our dogs, just like the narcotics and explosives dogs, don't necessarily find the thing. They find odor that hopefully leads to the thing. And if we have trained them correctly, they will alert to strongest source of odor, which is hopefully where we can dig up and find a body. But 9 times out of 10, that doesn't actually happen because of all sorts of other odor and scent theory issues. The last I heard, there were over 600 different volatile organic compounds associated with human remains. So my suggestion is that at any point, if there are any pseudo odors out on the market claiming that they can replicate an actual full body decomposition, I would like to see the training validation for that and the scientific validation for that, because as far as I know, scientists are still starting to figure out how all those volatile organic compounds ebb and flow throughout the entire decomposition cycle for a human. The cadaver dogs can address everything from forensics. So we're talking trace, swipes, smears, teeth, a single blood drop, or even blood that has been wiped down and painted over on drywall, all the way up to a full body. So depending on how the dog is trained, they have that capability. Not all cadaver dogs have that capability because of what they get called for, right? They can do historic to recent. I've just started training my 4.5-year-old Dutch Shepherd how to do historic and prehistoric grave detection. That is actually a specialty within cadaver dogs. So it's not, you may call a handler and be like, hey, I need you to come to a scene and look for blood spatter. And an ethical handler, depending on their training, would say, I'm not trained to do that. Let me put you in touch with the team who is. because last year I would have refused those types of searches. I would have refused some other type of searching because that is not where my dog has spent most of his training. Up until last year, my dog was primarily large bodies, preferably on rubble, but we can also do it in the wilderness. So now we're starting to expand that type of training. It is an ongoing training process. What cadaver dogs, depending on their training, can find? All of these things that are listed, provided that they have appropriately trained on them. A good cadaver dog should not find or alert on or do their final response, right? So we need to get rid of the alert word. It doesn't exist in the cadaver dog world anymore. That's coming out through ASB. They shouldn't find animal remains. They shouldn't alert on food, and they should definitely not find training aid supplies. They should theoretically be able to hit everything else, provided the dog has been exposed and has training to do that. When do you call search and rescue people? When you think you might need us. Because a lot of us, the people who have full-time jobs, including me, I may not be at home. I might be an hour and a half from home. I might not even have my dog, because trust me, we all don't drive around with the dogs in our truck. Now, all of the rest of the search and rescue stuff that's in my truck, oh yes, I have all of that stuff in my truck, but my dog's not there. I have to go home. I have to make babysitter arrangements. I have to do all of these things. You can also call us if you might need help bouncing ideas off of where should we go search. Maybe we've been out on a search for 3 days. What's next? Maybe we can help you set up catches for people who might be Alzheimer's patients, things of that nature. For cadaver dog people, schedule us. I understand that sometimes you have a case that evolves quickly and all of a sudden you get access to a search warrant and you are like, oh my gosh, we need cadaver dogs tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Totally get it. But if you have a case that you're working and you think you might need cadaver dogs 3 weeks from next Tuesday, call us, schedule us, have us put it on our calendar, and we'll touch base a couple of, the day before. And if you don't need us, you can scratch us off the list. I would much rather have that free time to go do something else than have you call me the day before and have to scramble to clear my calendar. What you should ask for when your responding team shows up. And I'll get into in a little bit what other questions you can ask, but ask for their credentials. If you have teams showing up on scene that you've called and you don't know them because you haven't done your pre-planning, ask them for their credentials. A volunteer professional will actually have a copy of their credentials in their car. All of mine are on Dropbox on my phone. I can pull them up and I can be like, where would you like me to send the link so you can print them off? They should also be certified in type. And what does that mean? So certified in type means that and I'll just use this example. FEMA level cadaver dogs are trained and certified to respond on large rubble for everything from, tornadoes all the way through World Trade Center or seaside collapse, big rubble. They are not necessarily trained and certified to respond to a crime scene where we're looking for a bloody knife or we're looking for blood spatter on a wall. Or you're looking for a body who has been buried 30 years ago. Can they possess that particular type of skill set? Absolutely. But they should also be certified in an appropriate wilderness type of cadaver dog certification versus only having their FEMA level certification. It'd be kind of like expecting a dog that is trained to find firearms to be able to be deployed as a full-blown explosives dog. So think about it that way. And there are certifications for all of the specialties that I listed. I am not going to get into all of the who's got the better certification, because it really depends on what your deploying agency wants. I have my own personal opinions, but I also understand that different parts of the country and different parts of the world have different requirements. And so that should actually be a discussion, especially for your cadaver dog work. It should be a discussion between law enforcement and your prosecuting attorneys as to what types of certifications you will accept, and then make sure that your resources actually have those particular certifications and they are current. Why is it important for a certification? Law enforcement has the responsibility for search and rescue operations, so the buck stops with you. It's a continuity and qualifications. I'll talk about in a little bit. NIMS typing, which actually gives out some of the resources so you can look at NIMS typing, and there's a whole nother reason for that. And then you actually have some legal considerations when you are using uncertified resources. So there is a whole thing called standard of care and endangered reliance and negligence kind of go all together. So one of the examples that I've seen, two examples given for this. So you have a search and rescue team that says, hey, on our team, we have trauma physicians. And when that team is deployed out on a case, they find the person really needs a trauma physician, but unfortunately, that trauma physician, due to their schedule, couldn't get off. Therefore, the people who you responded to go stave actually have an expectation for a standard of care based on your marketing. Now let's imagine that you have a canine search and rescue team who says that they have certified resources. They've gone out on a search, they've come back, they've called the area clear, and later another certified resource goes in and finds the person who has been deceased. Upon all of the examinations and by the medical examiner, they say that, guess what? If that first team had found the person, they would still be alive. And upon further investigation, you find out that the team does internal certifications only. You are actually open for a lawsuit because the certified team who did find the person could have possibly found the person when they were alive, and you could have saved the person's life. That is a combination of standard of care, which if you look it up, it relates a lot to the medical world, endangered reliance, and then negligence, because as we've talked about, responsibility for the search and rescue operation the buck stops with law enforcement. So guess who has the deep pockets? And especially when you're starting to deploy cadaver dogs, you want to make sure that the cadaver dogs are going to support your case. If you really want to get into all of the specifics about cadaver dog law, definitely talk to the USPCA, and also look up Sheepdog Guardian. They have, just like the narcotics dogs, we have to have certifications and training logs to go along with everything that we do. If you're going to search it anyway, you're going to have crime scene come in, crime scene process the scene anyway. Don't call the cadaver dogs. unless you really need them to, because the last thing you want to do is actually have evidence that's going to contradict in your case. So there are federal standards that actually govern search and rescue in the United States. ASTM actually has standards set forth for ground search and rescue, what those standards actually are. There are several certifying bodies in the United States that actually teach to that level for your ground searchers. The Academy Standards Board, which I sit on the Dogs and Sensors Committee, is actually the new version of Swig Dog. Everybody's heard of Swig Dog, right? So this is their website. I'll make sure to work with Don that all of the websites that I'm showing you, there will be links set in the notes of the YouTube channel so that when it goes live, you can, it's all interclickable, right? So the Academy Standards Board actually has all of these standards currently available for it. That we haven't started a lot of the search and rescue ones yet. The explosives dog standard is the only one that is out and fully published. So make sure you check that out. We're working on the cadaver dog standard. Hopefully by Thanksgiving, we'll send it out for edit or for review so people can actually see what we've been up to. And it will go through several iterations before it goes out. And these do become part of the Federal Register. So these are actually really important for you to know about. And when you get out on the stand and you're starting to walk through your qualifications and they ask you, does your certification meet or beat the industry standard? This is the industry standard that they're going to start looking at. So whether that applies actually across the board, whether it's search and rescue, narcotics, explosives, conservation, when we finally get to that point, keep in mind it is the government and it is committee work, so it takes a while. So be patient, drink a lot of coffee. The other thing to be aware of is the National Incident Management System, and NIMS came about after the World Trade Center when we had teams show up on site that didn't have communication systems that would talk to each other. And there are actually qualifications and capabilities listed out by resource type on this resource typing tool. There's not anything listed for trailing and tracking dogs. They decided that was outside the purview of NIMS because this is administered by FEMA and Department of Homeland Security. So I think they said that the trailing and tracking dogs were a little bit more of a Department of Justice thing. But this covers everything from your ground searchers to your cadaver dogs, wilderness dogs, disaster dogs, all of those sorts of things. Why is this important? It is important because in the language of most federal grants, there is a clause that says when responding to incidents, it doesn't matter which one, you use resources typed by NIMS, because if you don't, they can come after your federal grant money. That's the teeth that it has. So this is one of those instances where, a fire department in Oklahoma had gotten a couple of fire trucks. They had an incident. I don't even think it was a search and rescue incident. And they didn't use they didn't use the NIMS system or NIMS typed resources. The federal government came in and said, hey, you have to give us back the money that you used to buy your fire trucks. So welcome to being made an example of. This actually gives you the minimum level requirements for your search and rescue team. if you follow that link and you go and say, hey, I want to search, and you type in human remains detection, it will pop up with different types of human remains or cadaver dogs or wilderness search and rescue, and you can read through all of the qualifications. And in those qualifications, it actually refers back to, yes, this resource must have an ASTM compliant ground search certification. Yes, this here is the certification that they have that it must meet or exceed for your cadaver dog, for your water cadaver dog, for your live find area search dog. All of those things are in this particular tool. Some of your training can be done online. FEMA has this online little institute that you can go take all of the IC 100, 200, 700, 800, and all of those sorts of things can be done online. So we've come a long way with that, some sort of stuff. You guys are forgetting to ask questions. We're doing the talking head thing. If you have questions, make sure you ask questions. And I'm going really fast. I do realize this, but I'm almost done. So what should you do? Like I said before, search and rescue is a high money, low frequency use type of resource. So reach out to your search and rescue people in the United States or wherever. Get to know them before you have an event. 90% of the search and rescue, okay, probably 100% of the search and rescue volunteer professionals on the planet would be really excited to get to know their law enforcement better before we show up on a scene. You will ask for their qualifications. You may even get them to provide you with their qualifications before you even get out the door. Be like, hey, look, I know that I'm going to need some trailing dogs. So let's find out what these trailing dogs can do. Don't set them up to fail. You're just going to go out and you're going to train with them and you're going to watch what the dogs do. Vet the certifications. Make sure that they're not actually self-certifying, because that will get you into trouble in court. Have your canine trainer, have your canine handlers and their canine handlers work together. One of the things that has been super fascinating for me is to go start training, because I now do the bomb dog and the narcotics dog stuff. I've started working with a lot of the local law enforcement, and I'm learning from them, they're learning from me, because we actually cross over a lot in what we do. So make sure if you are law enforcement and you don't think you have search and rescue in your area, ask your emergency management coordinator. They might have a clue. If you really still can't find anybody, send me a note. I can at least find somebody in your state, because I probably know them. So other than that, where you can find me, this is one of the things that I now do. A friend of mine and a couple friends of mine and I now do a podcast where we talk about all sorts of dog stuff, kind of detection dog stuff. And if you have further questions, that's where you find me. Okay. How did, so here's a question, so I'm going to read this. How did I get your U.S. law enforcement to start coming out to see how you work? They don't. In Australia, we respect why they are wary, but how did you guys break the ice historically? Persistence. I call it professionally persistent. Professionally and politely be persistent. And that's a lot of it. And it's an ongoing struggle, because search and rescue is used so rarely that you often have a turnaround time within your law enforcement in between cases. So it's actually a constant marketing effort. and then you actually also end up doing all sorts of, you just end up getting called. Also talk to the emergency managers. Because if your law enforcement and your emergency manager for your county have a really good relationship, they may actually go call them first. We hope that that's how that works. Okay, so the one about how do I imprint my puppies, get with me offline. I did the master trainer program for the Scandinavian Working Dog Institute. A lot of what I do is along their methodology. I know who IRO is, which is the International Rescue Organization. It actually takes it's actually quite complicated. United States has their own certifying bodies. So we don't use IRO. It's seen more as a sport in the United States. Selecting new members and puppies. Oh my God, that's a whole nother webinar. Suitability testing for dogs and handlers. Yet again, a whole nother webinar. And I tend to use the FEMA stuff for older dogs. The handler self-select. Canine Census actually has out on the website an on-demand webinar where you can, it says the introduction to canine search and rescue, which is actually gets a lot of what I gave today. And we talk about selecting dogs. And actually we talk about the time commitment. And I love my search and rescue people, but I tell a lot of people, you know what? Nose work is hard. Competitive nose work. You can do it in the air conditioning. There aren't any ticks. And you can do it on your own schedule. So that's one of the things that I suggest for a lot of people with for search and rescue. But we do need search and rescue people because we're a dying breed. Chaz, I like to start on small and go large for my training aid stuff because I'm using the small odor sources to teach systematic searching versus going the other direction and having to teach the dog to look smaller. So for the narcotics and explosives and even the forensic cadaver dog work, I need the dog to be able to get their nose as close to odor as possible. That's hard to do with big odor, and teach them how to withstand nose time and stupid handling. I'm interested in West Virginia. You'll have to contact me about West Virginia. I have a couple contacts out there, and there might be people on the call, right? I would say for have the standards. So you're talking about if in the United States, the standards, what NIMS went out and did is, yet again, because it's the government, things are political. They had a couple of standards that people who sat on a committee liked. And so those are the standards that are used. So for NIMS, that's what's out there. The ASB, Dogs and Sensors Committee, is actually writing standards that are going to go in the Federal Register. So ideally, those two are compatible, but it is the government, so there we go. Kathleen, so most of your cadaver dog standards will actually require you to be land cadaver certified before you start doing, especially boat work for water cadaver stuff. And yes, for those of you still listening, there is a difference between a shoreline cadaver dog certification and a boat cadaver dog certification. It takes a whole bunch of additional skill sets to work a dog on a boat, plus a really good boat driver. So keep that in mind. How do I know when a dog is ready? 9 months old, if your dog, I'm reading, if people can't do this, I'm scanning what's in the comments, right? And I'm answering all of this. So, other teams don't even want to see him until he's 2. How do I know when he's ready? If you have a dog that will get out in any location and actively play and engage with you in any environment, with all of the different distractions going on, and you can use that toy or food play to motivate him, you will actually have a really good foundation. Because remember, we are teaching a dog to play a very specific game, and I have to have a paycheck in order to pay them to do that specific game. And that paycheck has to pay better than chasing cows or deer or rolling in whatever dead critter is out there. So all of that play, and I might get death daggers for some people. Some of the best people you can work with are the decoys and helpers from protection sports on how to build a dog, especially if you can find some positive-based play, confidence building people. To the agility people are awesome at this, to play with the dog, because you actually have to teach your dog how to play, and then you have to learn how to play with your dog. I spend the first year to 2 years of my dog's life teaching them that they are 10 feet tall and bulletproof, because when I need to send them out across a rubble pile, I need to send them down a ravine, or I need to send them out across an ice floe, I need them to think that they're going to come back. And they need to go out there and they need to hunt independently and find odor and then tell me about it. And the only way I can do that is by having a toy that we have spent a really long time building engagement and drive for. I also would make sure that you go watch this team who you're training with or want to train with. Volunteer to be a subject, volunteer to go sit in the woods, volunteer to go sit in a rubble pile. See how they train. If you don't like how they train, go find another team, because they're out there. We actually talked about in the podcast that we did about finding a training tribe for your search and rescue people. It's really hard. So let me know how I can support you in that, right? Oh, can I speak about being an independent? Yes. So in the search and rescue world, because a lot of us tend to be type A women, who are dog handlers. We actually have a lot of team dynamics that go on. So you actually end up with people who are what we call independents or lone wolves. And that just means that we don't want to be on a team. I actually happen to kind of be one of those people at the moment, because I have lots of other things going on. And besides the task force, I work independently, maintain my own certifications. The same qualifications, and I'll be honest, even if you have a team come in, for every person who is deploying out on your scene, you should have qualifications and certification requirements for every single one of them. So make sure that you do the same thing, whether it's team or a lone wolf. And you may find that some of your lone wolves tend to end up doing more of the specialty type of stuff. Maybe they're doing more of the crime scene stuff. Maybe they're doing, some historical remains detections as well. So they're really good at clandestine graves, those sorts of things. So it's just kind of like having, you have a whole plethora of things in your cabinet. Make sure you're selecting the right tool for the right job. Pseudo or cadaver piece, don't use pseudo. And the reason why is because if you go out and look up, there was actually a study done in 2014. I think it was Rex Stockholm, who at the time was with the FBI, was a scientist on the paper. There's actually a whole way that you validate training aids. The Canine Census website has a webinar that we did with Michelle Mon about how you actually validate training aids. And unless a company can show me that they have validated their training aids through a third-party system, especially for cadaver work, I'm not interested in using it, because let's think about it, especially what am I training my dog to find, right? How do I stock pieces? Right now I have a freezer because it's legal for me to possess them in my state and in my county. And yes, I freeze more than one piece at a time. I have a freezer with biohazard stickers on it. Everything's in Mylar bags. That's a whole nother webinar. Yes, I can do independent presentations for search and rescue groups. You can either contact me or go through Dawn. No, there is not a training aid that supplies human live scent, as far as I know, out there on the market that I would trust. Some of the FEMA dogs, because keep in mind, FEMA dogs are required to find people in disaster settings. So one of the items that we actually proof off of, or is in the natural environment that the dogs don't respond to, is dirty clothes. And so as far as I know, no. Do you have any legal protection as a SAR handler if a family sues and you have a national certified canine deployed through law enforcement? Yes. That's one of the reasons you should get a national certification, because the certifying body should be able to provide you with some cover. And there's the Good Samaritan law that you're okay under, and law enforcement has actually gone through and gotten the best resource for the job, right? Because you're certified. Does human extracted blood can be used as a substance for command? Yes, it can. Make sure you use human blood that doesn't have any of the anticoagulants in it, because the anticoagulants actually changes the composition of everything. So keep that in mind. And I'll just say it. You can use placentas. It's fine. Just make sure that you get out and train on other training aids that are human tissue. I'm going to probably catch heat, but that's the way it's going to be. Catherine, where do you find pieces? That's the hard one. That's why a lot of people, including me, up until the foundation has really started offering classes, have used placenta, because I can get placenta. I can freeze them. I can use them in my training. And those, okay, so I'm going to finish answering this one. You guys are feeding my, oh my gosh, I have to skip ahead and read everything, right? So where do you find cadaver pieces? You actually have to be really, really cognizant about what state or nation you live in on whether or not you can even have them. Check your local laws, talk to your state legislators, all of that sort of thing. Where do you get them? This is why I tell people to talk to midwives. You can get placentas. So those sorts of things. Okay. No, that's fine. I was just, whoever said something about Torchlight, totally get it. We have people who use stuff with anticoagulants, so I'm just going to kind of put that out there as a known thing. How do I put a bark alert on a human remains dog? I do private detection, DIY detection dog coaching. And to be honest, I put a bark alert on a human remains dog the same way I do with a live find dog, because in the end, my live find person in a hole is not going to play tug with my dog. And dead guys don't play. So a detection dog bark alert. I also want to make sure that that is the best tool for a job. A bark alert for a cadaver dog. The only reason I have a bark alert on my cadaver dog is because it's required by FEMA. So that's, welcome to my opinion. So any other questions? I'm assuming you're talking about your Jack Russell Terrier is distracted by other odors. What should I do? Ooh, it's a Jack Russell Terrier. That's a, reach out to me offline. That's dealing with distractions, diversions, and those sorts of things. That's a whole nother webinar. So Don, I think we're now up to like 5 webinars.
Perfect. Robin, is it okay if I put your email out on this list?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Or they
thank you.
can, yep. Double purpose dog. So when you're talking about a double purpose dog, are you talking live find and cadaver, or are you talking, some of that depends on, there's lots of debate going on of should you have dual trained dogs or should you have one dog, one job? Because if you start getting into dogs with different alerts for different odors, you then have to start documenting in your training logs that is that the dog is reliable, and in those being able to differentiate and offer those two. So here's what I will tell you, and I hope I don't mangle this, Desiree. Teach the dog one search cue. Do a find, refind, or do whatever. When you get there, you'll figure out that they're live or they're dead. It's kind of like a dog a bomb dog having to be on 16 different odors. I'm not going to ask a bomb dog to bark at ammonium nitrate, although that would make us all blow up, but whatever. All the way over to, no, you have to sit and stare on smokeless gunpowder. What we tell the bomb dog, I want you to sit. My dog sits, right? Other people's dogs do other stuff. It's fine. My dog will sit and stare at all of them. So you can very easily teach the dog, when I tell you to go search, you can go find live or dead. And this is one of the things that I did with my cross-trained dog. Go search was go find live or dead. Go find Zed, right? Go find cadaver. I split it out that way. It also, they were different equipment cues, all those sorts of things. So we can talk about that offline too. My email's on there. Where to find reputable and competent teams to train within Kentucky. Amy, send me a Facebook message or a note and I can get you networked in. Oh, another thing that a search and rescue volunteer, professional volunteer will not do is talk to the press or publish things on Facebook without prior approval from their deploying agency. We are the people who tend to do things a lot in the background. And I've been out on searches where I actually actively avoid the press. And I want, and actually all of the people I kind of train with also avoid the press. We do not want to be the person who is in the limelight. We do our stuff behind the scenes because that's what we do. So actively talking to the press or going up and soliciting. I actually don't even like talking to the family. I don't want to know. I'm there. I'm to do a job. I'm to bring their loved one home, and then I want to go home. But that's me. So other questions? And Mohammed, I do not know what that is. That's a really long acronym, so email me and send me a link. Do I do training plans? I do training progressions. Yes, so I have progression plans. If you want a really good example of progression plans, go look at the Scandinavian Working Dog Institute stuff. They have some phenomenal stuff. Oh, the International Search and Rescue Advisory Group. I will have to go look them up. I don't know them. So, Don and Melinda, did you guys have any dying information that you guys wanted to know?
No, but I can offer some about questions about how do you get together with law enforcement. One of the easiest ways is to make contact with a law enforcement canine. Most of the things that we do, a lot of the training is always going to be the same as we shape our dogs to do different things. Certifications, we're talking about mostly the same, if not the same. So for me, I was down in Mississippi. I just went and talked to the 18 cadaver dogs that were testing and sat there and talked with them about what they were doing, what they wanted, what we could do for them, what is problematic for them in their lives. When I was up in Minnesota, visited another group at a public demo for police canines. They were there and they were telling people all about themselves. Very interesting. I think the biggest thing for me was the Surfside building going down and being asked by AKC to reach out to the people working dogs down there to see what they needed. And I found out that you as well as we need to have backup, and AKC was the backup for us that day, or for them that day, providing a bunch of material for the dogs, and they're always available for cadet disasters. Also, I think it's, if you don't already know it, law enforcement needs you. They need you a lot. And it's becoming evident that that may increase in the future, just with things happening, whether natural or somebody else is causing something to happen. So we are very happy that to help any way we can. Thank you. Melinda?
Yeah, just to branch off what Dawn said, I can't emphasize enough the one thing that I've learned, and I've been so privileged and I guess honored to have been able to train with Robin a few times. And man, I'll tell you what, you just never stop learning. It is a completely different world. And I think what happens is you have law enforcement personnel who are oftentimes, they're being paid to go out, run a dog, do what they're doing. They're getting paid to train. They're being paid to do everything. And then you have the folks that, you guys do it because you love it and you're passionate about it. And I absolutely love that. And I cannot tell you all enough how impressed I am with that, because that's a big deal. And I don't understand personally why law enforcement does not take advantage of the education and the knowledge that a lot of civilian, quote unquote, civilian handlers can provide and offer to law enforcement. And I mean, I eat that up. I think we are falling behind as law enforcement. Robin knows this. We are falling behind as law enforcement. We're falling behind you guys. You guys are way more knowledgeable in a lot of areas than we are as law enforcement. And I can tell you that with sincerity after 34 years in law enforcement. I am absolutely learning every single day, and a lot of who I learn from is people like Robin and you guys. So keep it up, and we really appreciate you guys joining in on this. And we hope to be able to offer this kind of stuff continuing on. We do a lot for law enforcement, but it's time to start helping our fellow handlers out. And if anybody's in Iowa, I know you're going to find Robin, but I sure would absolutely welcome anybody as well. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Robin, so much.
You're very welcome. And we need to train soon. We live like 45 minutes apart, so we can train.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, definitely.
So the question about what's a good book, I'm going to put one up. It covers a lot of things. This is a book that I've read. it's a take from Cybertech's book, Scent and the Scenting Dog, and puts more value into all those things. It's one of the books that I read, and I put it out to our membership as a non-sponsored thought and of things that they could read.
The book that I put up is actually called Lost Person Behavior, a search and rescue guide on where to look for land, air, and water. And it's by Robert Kester. And it actually has charts and everything in it that you can use to start out all of your planning circles for your search stuff. So how far does a 2-year-old kid wander? All of those sorts of things. Now, the interesting thing about that particular book, there's probably a newer version if you go to the website that's listed in the book. And one of the things that they really ask law enforcement to do is to put statistics in on where lost people, not missing, lost people are found, because it helps drive the updating of the statistics. So you'll be able to, oh yes, there is an app. So there's an app for that, for the lost person behavior stuff. So thank you. So make sure that you check all that stuff out. And as a search manager, that's one of the things that we use, especially if the scenario that we are given actually supports a lost person and not a missing person.
Any other questions? I put in the comment section where you can find this video, this webinar after the editing, and then it will be on the USPCA YouTube page. This has been a great webinar.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
We want you back.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Look forward to seeing you all again. And we will have Robin back hopefully in the very near future. And I wish you luck and be safe. Thank you.